Welcome to Alasquatch, the show all about Bigfoot in the great state of Alaska. I'm your host, Beans Baxter. So lace up your boots, zip up your coat, and come with me on an adventure as we explore all things cryptid in the last frontier. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. We've got something a little different here for you today. Today in the studio with me for, I believe, the first time in Alasquatch history is my old lady, my wife, Tamron.
Hi everybody.
And we're going to do something, a little different. And we were kind of brainstorming about episodes. And I know a lot of people really like to hear about life in Alaska and what it's like living in Alaska. So not a lot of Bigfoot content on this one, but a lot of talk of how to survive in Bigfoot country, I guess you could say. We're going to talk about winter in Alaska and living through winter in Alaska. And if you hear some snores and snorts in the background, that's just our dogs. They're sleeping peacefully, not too far from us where we're recording here. So try not to pay any attention to them. And why don't you tell us what we're talking about today?
Okay, so I want to call this episode Living in Alaska Winter Edition because there's so much to discuss. I feel like we have to break up the seasons. But I'm born and raised Alaskan, which is actually kind of rare. Most Alaskans who are born here actually choose to leave and live somewhere else. Most people who live here come from somewhere else. So I'm a little unique. And I want to talk about what it's like to be from Alaska, live in Alaska, and be asked questions from people who are curious. What's the number one question you get asked from people when they find out you're from Alaska? What's the question?
Is it always cold, and is it always dark?
Yep, that's the number one question you're going to get asked when you find out you're from Alaska. So Alaska actually has 4 distinct seasons. And our average winter temperature is 25-35 degrees where we live because, we're at the southern tip of the peninsula. We actually prefer it to stay below freezing to avoid icy road conditions. In fact, today it got to 36 degrees, and sure enough, now we have icy roads, which is no fun. So we actually prefer it to be a little on the colder side, and we love our snow. Now, it can reach more extreme temperatures in northern Alaska, closer to the Arctic Circle, which averages closer to minus 15 to minus 5 degrees. A little fun fact, the coldest temperature ever recorded was in 1971, minus 80 degrees in Prospect Creek. That doesn't sound very fun to me at all.
When I was in the Army, I have slept outside in negative 60. And I can say pretty much, granted I have not been in negative 80, but I can say that once it hits about 20 below, negative 20, it all feels kind of the same.
It's just cold.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a little bit about our temperature. The next question is dark all the time. So Alaska, its motto should be go big or go home, because in the summertime we have the midnight sun, and in winter it's the opposite. Now, it's not dark all the time, but where we live, traditionally December, January, I'm going to work in the dark and I'm coming home in the dark. I don't really have an issue with all the darkness. Maybe it's because I was born here, but a lot of people do struggle with it. It actually has a name, seasonal affective disorder. Many people here will take vitamin D or go on tropical vacations in winter to battle the effects. And we're known to take tropical vacations in winter ourselves.
Yeah, 2 years ago, on this date, we were actually in Louisville, and we had went to see Metallica, remember?
Yes, and good thing we did it 2 years ago and not today because it's flooded.
Yeah, they had some I don't know if it was record-breaking, but some torrential rain, and I guess the place that we stayed, it's right on the Ohio River, and it's the parking garage is flooded. I guess the hotel is closed. Like, we could not be there right now. So, and I guess it's kind of it's happened before at the same area or the same place. So, I don't, you think they would build a wall or something around it? I don't know. I guess there's a reason why they can't fix it, but it's got to be costing them quite a bit of money whenever it happens.
Well, they built a casino right next to a main river, so perhaps that was not the best idea. Speaking of the lower 48, though, that's what Alaskans call the lower 48 states. We just refer to it as lower 48. And when I first went to the lower 48 as an adult, I realized how close the towns are. So in the lower 48, you can drive, 15 miles and go through 5 towns in some parts of the country. Alaska, it's completely different. Most towns here are 30 to 100 plus miles apart. Some sections, there will be absolutely nothing but wilderness in between with no cell reception. Now, this allows for some of the most pristine and amazing scenery, but it means you better be prepared for every possible scenario while traveling Alaska, even sometimes in your own town or in your own yard.
Yeah. So, do you want me to tell the story now?
Yeah, you should probably tell the story about how dangerous it is just to play with your own dogs in the backyard sometimes in winter.
So, this was just a few weeks ago, probably toward the end of January. I had, as everyone knows, I had recently retired, and I found myself at home, during the day. I was still working, I'm working on my book and stuff like that, and I found, I'd take the dogs out and play with them and try and get them wore out so that I could sit down and work on the book. Well, one afternoon I took them outside. We're in the backyard. We've got actually a pretty good sized property that we live on. But, generally during the winter, we only utilize the backyard right below or behind the house. Well, I had cleared out a spot for the dogs to play with they have this favorite ball that they play with. It's probably about the size of a soccer ball. And they had managed to get the ball over the snow berm. And there's probably about 3 feet, at this point, there's probably about 3 feet of snow in the backyard at this time. That wasn't, I'm not talking about the area I plowed out. This is, beyond the little play area where we were. And so they're light enough. They go over the berm and they go after the ball and they push it further down into the yard. Our backyard, it kind of slopes. It's kind of downhill. So I call them and I call them. They're not coming back. They're after the ball. So I'm like, well, I got to go get them. If I get the ball and bring it back, they'll come back. So I post hole. That means I'm walking through this deep snow, like 3 foot snow. It's up to my thighs or higher. And I'm not in the best shape to begin with. And so I start post holing down to where they're at. And I get close to them, and they're in this wooded area, and the snow's not very deep there because of the tree cover. And I get close enough to them to get the ball, and one of them pushes the ball even further away, and it goes downhill even more into another area where there is no tree cover, and there's again like 3 or 4 feet of snow. So I start trying to walk out there to get the ball, and they're chasing the ball around, pushing it around. And again, they're light enough to stay on top of the snow. I'm not. And I start sinking down into the snow and it's getting hard. Like I almost lost my boots. It's getting hard for me to move around. And I start realizing like I'm sweating profusely. It's even though it's probably in the 30s. I'm in the sunlight. I'm moving around. I'm exerting myself. I'm getting hot. I'm cold at the same time. I'm angry because I get close enough to grab the ball and they'd push out of the way. And I start thinking I'm like, holy cow, I might be in trouble here. I mean, I'm like less than 100 yards from my house. And if I don't get out of this soon, like I'm going to be in trouble. I'm either going to get too cold or too hot and I'm going to get hypothermic. And I ended up, luckily I had my phone in my pocket. And I did have reception, so I actually texted her and told her I was like, I might be in trouble here. But I finally ended up like getting the ball and getting out of there. I think the whole ordeal was probably like a half hour or something it took me. But I mean, I had stepped outside just to play with the dogs for, 20, 30 minutes. And I ended up thinking like, I might not get out of this. And I was in my own backyard. And, that's one of the things about living in Alaska is you never quite know, just stepping out in your backyard, you never know what's going to happen. And thankfully I had my phone with me and I was prepared. But I mean, there's been times when I have stepped outside with no phone. And it kind of puts things in perspective for you. Everything worked out okay. And, it's kind of embarrassing to say that I almost died outside playing with my dogs, but it could have turned out very differently. But what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, Alaska is a harsh environment, sometimes in even the best conditions, but having your phone on you was a great step to being prepared. The one thing about moving in snow is it's kind of like moving in the ocean with the waves. It exhausts you. So you find yourself becoming exhausted very quickly. You're wearing warm gear to battle the cold, but when you start exerting yourself like that, you begin to sweat. So, when you're a kid, you don't notice it so much. We used to play outside in the snow for hours. I mean, our parents would have to drag us in the darkness. We'd let it get so dark before we come in. But now as an adult, that was Harley. As an adult, I find it very exhausting, but I still like to play outside. Here's an example. My mother, who lives 70 miles from us, that's an hour and a half drive, she decides to go snowshoeing. Now, she's in her 60s, but she's still really active. And, she moved here when she was 6, so she's been in Alaska pretty much her whole life. She knows how to handle the harsh conditions, but she straps on her snowshoes and starts walking down a trail not far from her house, and she trips and falls. Well, the snowshoes get stuck at a 90 degree angle, so they're straight up and down. She's face planted, and she can't get back up because the snowshoes have become trapped. She ended up having to reach down, unlatch her snowshoes, which wasn't easy in the deep snow, and pull herself up out of the ground. And I imagine my dad would have came looking for her eventually, but you have to be careful. She's snowshoeing her own property, falls, and is trapped, and it took a lot of energy for her to try to get herself out of that situation. So it's best in Alaska winter activities to have a phone, or if you're going in an area that doesn't have cell reception, like you're snow machining, have an inReach, and tell people where you're going. So they can look for you when you don't come back when you're supposed to. That's my advice for winter activities.
So I have, going back to my little adventure in the backyard, I have snowshoes. And when I had such a hard time getting through that snow, I thought maybe I should go back to the house and put my snowshoes on. And I thought, no, that's ridiculous. I'm just going right here to get this ball. And it ended up turning into much more of an ordeal. I was actually like laying on top of the snow trying to distribute my weight so I wouldn't sink into it and trying to push that stupid ball around. But I don't know. Maybe if I'd went and got the snowshoes, I'd ended up in the same predicament as your mother. But it's another thing, you got to have the right tools for the job. I had snowshoes and poles, and I had the stuff in the house to handle that kind of environment. But I was, it's just right over here. I'm not going to mess with it. It'd just take me a second. And I ended up like texting her, like, I think I'm going to die out here. So,
which I thought was a joke at first, because we have a tendency to be sarcastic towards each other. And then he said, no, I'm serious. And I'm like, do I need to come and call the cavalry?
Yeah, I would have never heard the end of it if a week after I retired from being a police officer, I had to have someone come and pull me out of the snow in my backyard. I would have probably just died before I let that happen.
So that's just an example of things you can run into in your own yard. We like to take our dogs for walks a lot of times as well, so we have to be prepared for something that's unique to wintertime. So as you know, most bears are hibernating at this point. They do come out sometimes to go to the bathroom or eat, but for the most part, they're not a concern. Our biggest concern in winter is actually the moose. So they have those nice long legs, but even for them, the deep snow can be challenging. They prefer to stick near trails or highways. So when we do choose to take our dogs for walks, a lot of times we have walking sticks, bear spray, or even sometimes a firearm, because the moose have a tendency to hang out on the roadways or the trails with you, and you never know when you go around a corner, you might run into a moose. And a big concern, of course, is when we drive in winter. The moose hang close to the roads. It's easier for them to get to vegetation. They like the salt. So, the Department of Transportation, which handles the winter plowing and sanding and salting of the roads, the moose love that salt that collects near the side of the road. So you have to be concerned. We had a record one time. We drive between our town and my parents' town. Like I said, it's an hour and a half away. We drive it all the time, even in winter. And we had a record of 32 moose we saw one time just going one way. So that's not normal. Usually it's just 2 or 3, but they have a tendency to hang out near the road, and they will jump out at you in the darkness, and it's not pretty. When
It might have been more than that, because I don't think we started counting until we got to like 5 or 6.
Yeah, that was crazy. So talking about driving, we prepare ourselves, for every possible scenario whenever we choose to drive, whether it's just to my parents' house, hour and a half away, or the 4 hours it takes us to go to Anchorage to go shopping. And I'll let Beans talk a little bit more about what we actually take, but we have learned over the years from mishaps or mistakes, trying to increase our arsenal in our vehicles to be prepared for everything. So I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
So I always try in the wintertime, I always try and keep an extra blanket, flashlights, of course, because it's dark so much during the wintertime. You want to have a flashlight with some fresh batteries, extra batteries, and of course blankets, any kind of survival gear. You want to have anything that you need to maybe get your car unstuck, a tow strap, something like that. If somebody stops to help you, if neither one of you has a tow strap, it's not going to do you any good. Maybe they can give you a ride or something, but it always helps to have a tow strap in the vehicle. I think I might even have 2 tow straps in the truck. I don't remember, but and it's trial and error too. I've learned through the years. I've added things to my kit in the truck. Just recently, this actually happened in the summertime, not the wintertime. We were out in a remote area, had a flat tire. I went to change the tire, and all I had was my factory jack that came with the truck, and I had just a terrible time with it. It was sliding. I was on uneven ground. We were on a gravel road, and as soon as we got out of there, which I managed to get the tire changed and get us back on the road, but as soon as I got out of there, I ordered a better jack, a hydraulic jack, and a jack stand. Not a jack stand, but a jack, something you can put on the ground, like if you're in mud or gravel or uneven ground, to help stabilize your jack so it's not sinking down on the ground. It's not moving. At one point, I was trying to take the tire off the truck, and the jack slid and the truck fell. But luckily I was okay. I was out of the way. And that's just, it's trial and error. You adapt and you put things in your kit. Going back to the flat tire, I had a can of Fix-A-Flat in the truck. And as soon as the tire started going flat, I was like, oh, no worries. I've got Fix-A-Flat. I'm prepared. Well, that can of Fix-A-Flat was 11 years old. And when I tried to use it, it was like dust coming out of it. So I had to resort to using the spare tire. So, you've got to keep on top of your gear too. If you've got something in there, in wintertime, check your flashlight batteries, change them out. Check your hydraulic jacks, make sure they didn't freeze over the winter and break. You got to keep up on your gear, the stuff you've got in there, because it might save your life. I'm a big fan, like she said, I have a Garmin inReach. And I have a yearly plan with that. I never turn it off. I think when we first got it, I maybe turned it off, a few months out of the year when I didn't really go out much. We recently changed that because it seemed like we always, even if we were just running up to Anchorage to go shopping, we would find ourselves like, oh, let's take the inReach just in case we break down. We can call for help, or we can let somebody know where we're at. So it's really important just to have a means of communication and a means of self-rescue. And in fact, I have one of my favorite shirts that I have. It's made by a company called 30 Seconds Out. It's a veteran-owned company, and it says it's got Thor's hammer on it, the traditional Thor's hammer, not the one from the movies. And it says, "No one is coming. It's up to us." And I think that's pretty fitting in Alaska. And being a rural police officer like I was, that's something that we often had to deal with. A lot of times, we were it. We were the help. So you had to be ready for anything. You had to be able to help yourself and help whoever you were trying to help. And that's a good motto that we try to live by up here. Is nobody's coming. It's up to you. So, what do you want to say?
So, speaking of learning as we go, so it was 8 years ago. We're going to take our kids, we had twins, on a family vacation. We're going to take them to Florida. It is dead winter at this time. It's mid-December. We have to drive from where we live to Anchorage, 4 hours away, to get to the airport so we can fly out that night. So we're going on a tropical vacation. We've packed shorts and swimsuits and t-shirts and flip-flops. We start on the drive. Unfortunately, there was a storm, but we took our time, no problem. We get into the mountain passes where there is no cell reception, and this is before we had our inReach. And a gentleman passes us, unfortunately going too quickly. We run into him a few miles down the road. He is in the ditch. And shockingly, we see this red liquid splattered on his windshield. And my first thought was, this gentleman just killed himself. So Beans runs down there. I think there happened to be even a fireman behind us that was off duty. They run down there. The guy's okay. Turns out it's a bottle of Tabasco sauce that shattered. But the nearest hospital was Seward, which was about 80 miles away. He's going to drive himself there. We pull him out with our rigs, and he says he's cold. And we did not have a single piece of winter gear to give him. We had nothing but tropical clothes. So lesson learned, now we bring a bag with us whenever we go anywhere with extra winter clothes. That's hats, gloves, pants, extra pair of socks, because you just never know when you're going to break down on the side of the road, you're going to have an accident, or someone else needs your help. You might need that extra winter gear. So that was a lesson learned from 8 years ago. So we definitely learn as we go.
That was actually a rollover. He had rolled.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he rolled his car, which it was a little. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was a little Ford Ranger. And I mean, it started right up and went, but he was going too fast for conditions. He didn't have the proper tires. And that's another thing I can get into is if you're going to be in that kind of environment, sometimes you just don't know, especially in places like in the lower 48 where the weather changes at the drop of a hat. But up here, if it's January, December-ish, you can bet that you might run into some bad weather. So you should outfit your rig, studded tires, or at least good winter tires, and have the good sense to drive safely.
So I've noticed in the lower 48, they've been having some unusual weather patterns. So perhaps some of you are experiencing weather you've never seen before, including ice and snow. One thing here in Alaska that unfortunately not all Alaskans do, but most of us know, is in wintertime, give yourself plenty of space to stop. So whether you're behind a vehicle and you're just traveling, or there's an intersection, you have to make sure to give yourself plenty of time to slow down, because you will slide. And sometimes even having the best tires isn't going to help you. All that's going to help you is defensive driving. But, we had something happen the other night, Saturday night. So just a couple days ago, we attended, a gathering, and we're in the truck, and the weather was fine. It was clear skies. It was just a few inches of snow on the ground. But we're taking some friends of ours home, and they live on the mountain like we do, but they live on the east side. We're west side.
West side?
West side. West Hill, not East Hill. But we live, 900 feet above sea level. You're climbing a mountain, no problem, right? So we're going up there. We get them dropped off at their house. Now, another thing about Alaska is we live on remote roads. So when you start heading down a road in Alaska, there's a pretty good chance that's the only way in and out. It's not like roads in lower 48 where you've got a bunch of side roads. So we get them dropped off. At this point, it's midnight. Our dogs have been by themselves for 5 hours. I'm eager to get home and get them a potty break, and I miss them. So we start making our way back home, and it must have happened just like 2 minutes after we went by. There was a neighbor down the road, not our neighbor, our friend's neighbors. At this point, we're about 5 miles from home, I think. Got stuck. So they were leaving their house, and they misjudged the ditching and went right into the ditch. They're blocking the entire road. There is no way out. So unless we can get this person out of the ditch, whether by our vehicle or a tow truck, we're not making it home. And unfortunately, here where we live, we really only have one towing company. So if they're somewhere else, like 20, 25 miles away, you might be waiting hours. So luckily, the gentleman comes up to us and he goes, "Do you have a tow strap?" And I said, "Yes, we do." So we have a tow strap. I'm not sure why he didn't have one, but I'm sure he does now. So we were able to pull him out of the ditch. It took about 20 minutes. It took some finagling. A mistake people make here in Alaska, especially if they're not from here, they think that these snow berms on the side of the road have ground underneath them. They don't. They have ditches. So you will get sucked right into them if you're not careful. But we were back on our way. Heading home. We had to climb higher up the mountain, and at this point we're gonna go. It's actually like a horseshoe, East and West Hill. You go up the different hills and they connect at the top. So we're just gonna go over the top and head to our side of the mountain. So I'm going along. I'm going slow. I'm taking it easy. I got my high beams on. It's 12:30 at night. And then sure enough, a yearling, which is a moose that kind of just got kicked out of the nest. So he's not quite a year old, but the moms right now are go away. They're pregnant. They're getting ready to have the new babies. So they kicked all their young out, and these moose are still quite inexperienced. He's running down the middle of the road. Now, the berms on the side of the road are 5 feet plus high. He cannot get over them. So what we're hoping for, he'll go down someone's driveway or side road. But being an inexperienced moose, he's running down the middle of the road. I'm going 10 miles per hour, and we were behind him for at least a mile, I would say.
I don't think it was that far.
It felt like a mile. At this point, I'm almost enraged because I want to go home. Every obstacle is just in our way. But, another example is the moose are struggling to stay in the woods. They're hanging out near the roads, especially the young ones. And you just never know when one's going to come popping out of a driveway or over a berm. It's something that happens all the time. But it was just another example of how Alaska will throw things at you when you're just trying to get home.
Yeah. We actually have some dash cam footage of both of those incidents. And we'll put together a little YouTube video and we'll put it in the show notes so you can kind of see our journey to try and get home on Saturday night. It was weird. It was just one obstacle after another, and but we got home finally because we had a tow strap and because we were watching for wildlife. If not, we might have. I don't know what we would have done. I guess we'd have had to spend the night somewhere else and hope the dogs could hold it till morning.
So I would get somebody I know who lives on that road with a 4-wheeler and say, "You're giving me a ride to my house. I'm getting to my dogs." I'll leave you at your friend's house. I'm going to go get the dogs. But, so no, it is a big learning process. We don't always know everything. Sometimes we have to learn as we go, but Alaska is a wonderful place to visit in winter, especially if you like outdoor activities. It's pristine here. It's so quiet in winter. I love a fresh snowfall. I'll step out into, our back porch and you can't hear anything. It's just so quiet and so beautiful. Here. I do love winter. At this point, I'm kind of over it though. I'm starting to get the spring bug. I'm kind of ready for summer to show itself. But yeah, you should definitely come visit in wintertime. And if you have any questions or you're curious about anything, you can always contact Beans, and happy to answer. I love talking about Alaska. I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I lived out of Alaska for about 2 years. After I got married, we went to Kentucky, which is a different set of problems than Alaska. But I love living here. I hope people come visit. And of course, if you have any questions, send Beans an email or a message. And if he can't answer it, maybe I can. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed talking about winter in Alaska. Anything can and will happen. Alaska is the last frontier for a reason, and it's an unforgiving place, but it's also very beautiful.
Yeah, we used to sell Alaska. That used to be your job. She worked in tourism. And
I did.
She would talk all day to people that had never been to Alaska and tried to convince them to come to Alaska.
I didn't have to do any convincing. All I had to do was just talk about how much I love it, and they'd be happy to come. I hope everybody who wishes to come to Alaska has the opportunity to do so, whether that's summer or winter. It is a wonderful place to visit and live.
Yeah, it's intimidating though, especially it seems like for me, for people that live where I grew up. I mean, how many people on my side of the family have come to visit us? Like two. Well, my cousins came up on the cruise, and then my dad came up basically to get the grandkids. So I mean, I don't even know if we can count that. He didn't really come willingly. He came because he had to get the kids.
We've even offered to pay for people's plane tickets to come visit us. It's like, come visit us. We'll pay for your plane ticket. You'll stay with us. We'll show you around. We have all the equipment to go take people out and see things. We'll go fishing, hiking, four-wheeling. Nope.
I can't go to Alaska. That's what I hear.
No, it's a great place to live. So I encourage people to try to come if they can.
Yeah, and I mean, we could probably do another one of these, a two-parter just on winter, because there's quite a bit of stuff we didn't even talk about. We didn't talk about winter activities or anything like that. We basically just talked about winter driving, and
and snowshoeing attempts.
Yeah, and almost dying in my backyard with my dogs, who would have probably started to eat me after like an hour. But yeah, we could do a whole nother episode just on this, and then I'm sure we'll do a summer version too, where we talk about the intricacies of living in Alaska in the summertime.
Yeah.
They are sawing some logs.
Yeah, that's the snoring there. Which, yeah. I mean, if you want to, I guess we should talk about Bigfoot at least a little bit. So the big question is, if Bigfoot does not hibernate like the bears do, how does Bigfoot struggle in the snow? Is it like the moose, where actually wintertime is the time of the wolf? So wolves love wintertime because they're just light enough to stay above the snow. The moose are not. So that's their prime hunting season for wolves, is winter. So if Bigfoot is as heavy as he's supposed to be, just like the moose, is he or she struggling in the snow like the moose are?
Well, I've always wondered, because, I mean, it's in the name, Bigfoot. Do you think their foot is big enough that it acts like a natural snowshoe and keeps them above maybe from sinking too far deep in the snow?
That's a really good question. I mean, I know, of course, this doesn't really compare in size, but if you look at the paw of a lynx, their paw size compared to their body size, it's massive, and it allows them to stay above the snow. Perhaps, you can test it out. I mean, take your snowshoes and load yourself with as much gear as possible and go see if you sink in the snow. But yeah, how does Bigfoot deal with wintertime? And we can talk a little bit about moose, what they eat. They love eating willow and birch bark. They do try to get the grasses near the road or areas where the snow isn't so deep, but they actually survive off of a lot of bark in wintertime. And in fact, talking about identification, moose's scat in winter will be those hard round pellets that most of you probably have seen online or in videos about Alaska. But oftentimes in summer, people will mistake moose poop for bear because it can be a little bit runnier. They're expecting the pellets. But so what is Bigfoot eating in winter, and is he staying above the snow?
I don't know. If I knew that, I would probably I'd probably be a richer man, because I'd know where to go to get one. I think that they probably they don't hibernate, I don't think, but I think they probably go into a state of, torpor, I believe is what it's called. Something similar, where they do as little as possible and just do enough to survive, basically. There's not a lot of sightings in the wintertime up here, or really in many places. Keeping track of sightings and activity, most places see the most activity in fall and spring, and but you could also argue that there's more people getting out into the woods in spring and fall, and that's why there's more sightings. But there's also a lot less roadside crossings and stuff in the wintertime, and I know I've done quite a bit of squatching in the wintertime, and I have not had much luck at all in the winter. Usually it's in the late fall and spring when I have any kind of results up here.
So it almost sounds to me like they're more like bear then, because even though we have less tourists in summer, Alaskans have quite a bit of winter activity. We've got the snow machiners, we've got fishermen, ice fishing. And, the bears like to go into the high mountains to hibernate because they don't want it to warm up. It'll bring them out of hibernation. So they actually go high into the mountains to hibernate, which the snow machiners and the skiers will sometimes get that high. So are they perhaps going into the territory of Bigfoot while they're up there? But the reason why there's a lot of activity in spring and fall, if I had to guess, was just like the bears. In the spring, they're starving, so they're eager to come down and try to get as much food as they can while they wait for the fish. And then in fall, they're going after berries and then the last of the dying fish, that have spawned, trying to fatten up as quickly as possible before going to winter sleep. So perhaps Bigfoot have a lot of similarities to bears.
Yeah, possibly. And we know that in Raincoat Sasquatch, J. Robert Alley's book, there's a tale of a bear and a Sasquatch coming out onto a beach almost at the same time, and basically, whoop, nope, I'm going the other way. And I personally, my theory is I think they do their best to avoid each other. And you were talking about wolves a while ago, and that really kind of brought some questions into my. How many wolf versus Bigfoot battles have been fought out there?
I would not want to take on a pack of wolves, even if Bigfoot is as big and as strong as they should be to be able to survive up here. Wolf packs are known to bring down, 1,200-pound moose. They'll take on bears. There's nothing like a pack of animals working together. So perhaps the only way Bigfoot can survive a wolf attack would be if they had their own pack.
Well, there's a pretty widely, it's not a fact, but most Bigfoot researchers posit that Bigfoots really don't like dogs. You hear about them when they come around people's houses, stuff like that. Bigfoot, not dogs. That they don't suffer the dogs much. The dogs will go into the woods and not come back and stuff like that. So you could definitely make a connection that Bigfoots have maybe just a dislike for canines, and it could go back to the wolf thing where they just have a hatred of wolves and just avoid them at all costs or take them out at all costs.
Well, that would make sense because it's the true same thing for moose. The reason why moose a lot of times will attack dogs that aren't even bothering them. If you're just walking your dog and you're trying to leave, the moose will charge because they see the dog as a wolf, which is their number one predator in winter. So moose do not suffer dogs at all. They're actually my biggest concern, especially in winter, but pretty much all year round, is the moose is my biggest fear because they're just so common. But that would make sense if Bigfoot don't like wolves or dogs. Moose don't either.
Yeah. On the next episode of Sasquatch, wolves versus everyone.
I love wolves. They're just amazing pack animals. They're fascinating. But I think at this point in the episode, if we're done talking about Alaska, which I can talk about forever, but we've probably overwhelmed people with all this information, we should talk about our upcoming launch party.
That is right. We should have said something at the beginning of the episode, because if they didn't make it all the way through, they're going to miss. You know what? Maybe I'll record an intro and put it in there. But on March 20th at 3 p.m. Alaska time, I think that's going to be about 7 p.m. on the East Coast, we are going to have a launch party, a live launch event. It's going to be live on Facebook, YouTube, and possibly Instagram. And it's going to be, what's it going to be for?
Oh, it's going to be for your book, Abandon. So it is coming out soon. It'll be available at that time on Amazon. Hopefully we'll have our author copies in, if not soon after that. For those of you who want to get personalization or autographs, they can buy them from our website, lasquatchpodcast.com. But if you're eager to just get them right away, or you're not really worried about an autograph or personalization, you can always get them from Amazon. But we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about what it's like to self-publish through Amazon. Beans, of course, is the author. I had the pleasure of being the editor. I've never been an editor before, so that was a learning experience. But we'll talk about the book, what it was like to write the book, publish the book, and then, of course, we'll talk about Bigfoot.
Yeah, and they will. We're going to have to end soon. I'm starting to lose the ability to speak. We're going to have some giveaways. We're going to give away a couple of copies of the book and some other goodies.
Yeah, some merchandise. So, thanks everyone for listening, and for those of you who join us on the launch party. Hopefully we'll have a good time. And as always, thanks for supporting Alaskwatch. I really appreciate it.
Yep, you can sign up to attend the event on Facebook. If you just go to the Alaskwatch Facebook page and scroll down till you see the event, you can go ahead and if you click going, Facebook will give you a little reminder right before it starts. And I believe you can do the same thing on YouTube. There should be an event on YouTube that you can be reminded of if you want to watch it on YouTube. And you can go to AlaskwatchPodcast.com as well. Go over to the news section, and there should be a link over there that will take you directly to the Facebook event. I really appreciate everybody's support, and I hope everybody can get their hands on a copy of the book, because I'm really proud of it, and I think it's really going to be a good book. I think people are really going to enjoy it. Well, we'll get into this there in the launch party, but there's some stuff in the book that you can't find on the internet, which is rare these days. I've actually gone out and done some old-fashioned investigating, and it's going to be in the book. I think it's going to be interesting.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.